All right, so beating the tax and inflation trap, I don't think people really realize how taxes, really what we talk about when we talk about tax planning, we're really talking about protecting your purchasing power
Hmm.
Hmm.
because the majority of people have retirement accounts that are tax deferred.
Hmm.
So when we take a withdrawal, we've got to pay taxes. So if I got
Hmm.
to take $1,000 out, and I'm in a 20% tax bracket, I'm really only netting $800,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So this is a problem because if tax rates go up, it affects our purchasing power.
Right.
But then on top of it, we have inflation, which affects our purchasing
Hmm.
power. So let's talk about solving that problem for people because that seems like to me one that couldn't be solved.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really comes down to the simplicity of taking control of what we really can't control, right? Because who knows what tax rates are going to be in the future?
Right.
They're not permanent, right?
Right.
We've been told they're permanent,
Yeah.
but they're very favorable right now.
Hmm.
But they may not always be. So,
Right.
what can we do now to mitigate that in the future?
I agree. I mean, I like to control what I can control. I'm more analytical.
Hmm.
And so for me, I might get a tax break now by deferring money into a 401k.
Hmm.
But if I can control what I can control, I could actually go Roth, just pay the taxes in the 401k.
Right.
And now I get all tax free growth and all that money is mine when I choose to use it. And I don't have to worry about maybe
Hmm.
tax rates being significantly higher 20, 25, 30 years
Well,
from
and
now.
can we take a moment and talk about why does everybody defer their taxes?
Yeah.
Why does everybody put their money into tax deferred accounts? Because 30, 40 years ago, everyone was told you're going to be in a lower tax bracket
Right.
in retirement.
Right.
Defer the taxes now, get the
Mhm.
tax break now. Whenever you're in retirement, your income will be lower, you'll be in a lower tax bracket. Is that true? Most
No,
oftentimes
no, I
not.
can tell you after 25 years of doing this, the majority of people we retire do not wind up in a lower tax bracket.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
It is one of the things that is just not true.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if you think about the savings back then too, Michael,
Hmm.
it's significantly different than it is today.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you hit what, 250 grand 40 years ago, that was a significant amount of money
Hmm.
to have saved. Now, a lot of people are hitting seven figures in savings. The problem is they've actually never paid the tax bill on
Correct.
that
Mhm.
seven figures.
Yeah.
And they're not sure how much is that of that is
Mhm.
theirs.
Right.
Yeah.
Is
Right.
it
I can tell you my half of
90%?
it.
Yeah. Is it
Yeah.
half? Is it less? You
Right.
never know. And if you
Exactly.
look at historical tax rates,
Hmm.
you should be running to do some tax planning
Exactly.
right now.
Yeah.
But what people are doing is they're continuing to defer the taxes and the money's growing, which is great that the money's growing. And that's compound interest.
Right.
But you're also compounding your tax problem
That's right.
because it
Yes.
grows and grows tax deferred. And then every dollar that comes out is taxed at your income level.
So
Yeah.
why tax deferred accounts and why tax free accounts? Well, here is my thought process, and tell me if you guys. So if taxes are higher, which they're not right now, they're the lowest they've ever been.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If taxes are higher, I am going to use a tax deferred account.
Right.
Yeah.
If taxes are lower, I'm going to pay the tax now
Mhm.
and use a tax free account, right?
Right.
Right.
Because why would I defer taxes when
Mhm.
taxes are low? I would rather just pay it out of my paycheck right now, put my money in a tax free account like a Roth,
Right.
and then let that grow tax free forever. Because think about that. Not only is the money you take out of those accounts tax free, but every amount of growth that you get in that account is tax free, which means
Yeah.
essentially
Mhm.
you could take all of that money as a lump sum and not owe 1 single cent in taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
And whenever they created the 401k back in the 70s, the top tax bracket was 70%.
Which made
Right?
sense to defer it into that.
Made sense,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
But as we continually talk about on the show, times have changed. Tax rates have changed, but the message is still the same. Defer the taxes, defer the taxes. But that's not the plan anymore.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenges that we see is really the education around taxes,
Right.
Mhm.
right? A lot of people aren't knowledgeable about how taxes actually work. We're in a progressive tax system,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? So starting brackets 10%, it goes to 12, there's a big jump to 22%,
Mhm.
24, 32, 35, 37. That's the top tax bracket. A
Mhm.
lot of people think, well, if I go $1 over from 12 to 22, then my entire income
Mhm.
is taxed at this 22%
Yeah.
paycheck.
Mhm.
That's not the case.
Right.
Only the $1 would be taxed at that 22%.
I'm so glad that you brought this up because I think that people need to be educated on that because I wish we had a whiteboard right now because I'd like to do some math because you're 100% right. That's why if you're doing, let's say, a Roth conversion, and you do have some money that goes into a higher tax bracket, it can be worth it sometimes because you're only paying the higher tax on that little bit amount that goes into that higher bracket.
Yes.
And most people, you're right, we've seen it working with the baby boomer generation for as long as we've had. They're all under the impression that whatever tax bracket I hit, all of my money gets paid at that level.
Correct.
And that's just not true. And I think the other thing is people don't understand the difference between doing your taxes and tax planning itself.
Well, and that's one thing I wanted to touch on because probably the biggest piece of education that we can give is tax planning is not, oh, hey, in a couple years, I'll do some tax planning and then my tax planning's done because I did it. Right. It's not, hey, I did my tax planning's done. Yeah. This is something that time is on our side with, right? We need time on our side with this because it's not a snap of a finger and I fixed my tax problem.
Right. It needs done every single year.
Exactly.
Right. You need to look at where your income is this year. What additional bonus did you get at work? What tax bracket are you in? And how much can you be moving out of that tax deferred account year by year? It's not you set it once and forget it. This is why we feel you need a long-standing relationship with a fiduciary to help you navigate year by year what kind of taxes you can avoid.
Yeah, and Neil, let me ask you this because I want to know if you agree with this. But we're older than these two guys.
Obviously,
they got a long runway. But if you have a decent amount of time left before you retire, let's say a 10 or 15-year time horizon, right? You essentially could do all of your conversions at once, right? Meaning if you got $500,000 sitting in a 401k, why not just convert all of it right now? Because time's on your side, right? To be able to make up what you're going to pay out in taxes versus somebody that might be 60 that wants to retire at 65. We might want to look at that over a 5-year period versus doing it all at once. But I mean,
I remember we actually did this a few years back, probably 5 or 6 years back. You and I were working with a woman who had significant income, was never going to be in a lower tax bracket than the highest tax bracket. And we chose to do a $2.5 million conversion at the highest tax rate.
Yes.
And the reason that we did that is because her income was so significant and growing every year.
Yes.
We knew that if we just ripped that Band-Aid off right then and there, I think she was like 57, 58. Now, she did have to pay the taxes out of her pocket, which wasn't a big deal for her.
Yes.
But it made a ton of sense. Doesn't work like that every time. That's why the planning is so important. But you're right. I mean, you have to factor in how much do you have in deferred already? What's your income right now? What's your anticipated income in retirement? What tax bracket do we see you in? But you got to keep in mind the federal tax rates are so low right now, historically low, that to your point, it can make a lot of sense.
And I will say that one of the brilliant things that him and I did for this woman was the fact that she had enough money in her non-retirement accounts to pay the taxes. So when we're dealing with a $2 million conversion and you're in a 30% tax bracket, I mean, what are you looking at? $600,000 in taxes roughly, right? So rather than her paying that from the $200,000 in qualified money and only now having 1.4 in a Roth IRA, we paid for it with her after-tax money so that all $2 million went into the Roth. And then on top of that, we used a 20% bonus annuity, which gave her $400,000, and she went from 2 million to 2.4 million. So almost 85% of her taxes were paid by the bonus. And these are the strategies that you're never going to see at a big box firm. You're not going to see that. They just don't have the tools available to do that because the dirty little secret is the fact that the big box firm advisors have to work with the approved products by the firm. And that's called the grid.
Right.
Folks, look it up. That's all I'm going to tell you. Look up the selling grid for financial planning firms. Whereas us, we have so many options. We have to use a software to sift through it all for us, because when we go on and we look for an annuity for somebody, I mean, how many do you think are in there when we pull that up?
Hundreds.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
Only A-rated.
Yeah.
The only companies we use A-rated. So we, make sure it's put in the software program that we're only looking at A-rated
Yeah.
companies. And we get hundreds of different options
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
people.
Here's what I do want to touch on with that story you just shared too, because a lot of people will hear that and go, oh gosh, converted in the highest tax bracket? That doesn't sound like it's a good idea.
Mhm.
But 15, 20 years down the road, what if 37% is the lowest tax bracket?
Yeah.
Right.
And now she's converting in 50, 60%,
Right.
or
Mhm.
taking the money out. And that kind of plays to the inflation side of things too, because now when she goes to take money from her Roth side of things, she can take the same exact amount of money out and actually get a pay bump because there's not tax coming out of that.
Correct.
Right.
withdrawal.
And what I love about the work that we do,
Mhm.
and I think why it works so well, is when him and I did that strategy, it wasn't like him and I were going, our opinion is that she should do this.
Yeah.
No, we looked at the math
Yeah.
on doing a conversion over time
Yep.
versus a conversion all at once. And
Mhm.
we looked at the spreadsheet, we compared it to, and we go, okay, this is obviously the one that's most financially beneficial to her.
Mhm.
And that's the one thing I want people to understand, is that when we build a plan, it's not based off of our opinion.
Right.
It's based off of what the math is showing us.
Exactly. Yeah, I just had some folks that, I'm sorry if I get a little excited about this, but I think it's the best plan possible. Okay. So
There's no plan that's better than mine.
so I mean, what we did for them is we are doing a conversion strategy within an income annuity. So let me walk you through that. So we are moving from tax deferred to tax free over a few years, converting this money so that whenever they are in retirement and they turn the income on, it's all in a Roth IRA. So they have guaranteed lifetime income that is completely tax free.
Yeah.
Now, how that compounds is they don't have to worry about RMDs or anything like that. That's tax-free income. And now their Social Security is tax-free as well because they don't have the other
Wow.
income there.
Right.
So they are in a
Yes.
0% tax
Yes.
bracket in retirement,
Yes.
still having over $100,000 a year in income.
So,
Love it.
we talk about diversification in stocks, right? And your investments. What about diversification in your tax strategy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, you think about, that's why as a fiduciary firm, it's really important for us to have all the assets.
Right.
I'm not saying because we don't play nice in the sandbox with others, but we have to know
Right.
the
Yeah.
tax consequences of each investment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because when you have non-retirement accounts, depending on the investment that you choose, that's going to kick off taxes, right?
Yes.
So if you
Mhm.
think about the banks finally paid us some interest. We like that over the past 3 years. They paid us 3, 4, 5% in interest on our savings. Well, that did create, though, taxes,
Yes.
Right.
right?
Right.
You think about a lot of people put money in mutual funds
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
non-retirement accounts. What happens with mutual funds? Well, they kick off not only dividends and interest, but also redemption. So you have
the
capital
capital
gains,
Yes.
Right.
right?
Mhm.
If we don't know the types of investments you're in, we
Mhm.
potentially get a surprise. That's the last thing that we want.
No, and,
Yeah.
look, I mean, by the way, folks, I would tell you, if you have a specific strategy that you want to hear us talk about and solve, share it with us in the comments. And on our next episode, we'll do a unique case design around something you share that you would like a solution to. We're here to help. And I think, that's one of the things that we're really big on at Secure Money Advisors, is the fact that we just want to educate people on the
Mhm.
fact that there's so many different strategies that they have probably never even have heard of, because we really are very unique compared to the mass financial planning
Oh, yeah.
community
Mhm.
because of our true independence.
Right.
And when people talk about, I'm a fiduciary, the next question you should be asking, well, okay, are you a fiduciary and are you also independent?
Yeah.
Because a fiduciary that's not independent is a completely different animal.
Yep.
Mhm.
That's the
And
truth.
where we have the competitive edge in helping people is the fact that we don't have anybody telling us what insurance company I can use,
Mhm.
what annuity I can use, what investment I can
Yep.
do. If I want to put Bitcoin in somebody's portfolio, if I want to, buy, a specific annuity for somebody, I can do it. I have the authority to do that, right?
Mhm.
And the big box firms just don't, even if they're a fiduciary.
What about the authority to help people tax plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the disclosures say they can't help you do that at a big box firm,
Mhm.
How many
right?
people
They're
you
going to
think
say consult
right.
your CPA.
Yep.
And we talked about this earlier. Then it's going to be phone tag, right? The CPA says, I don't really know what you're talking about as far as the
Mhm.
tax planning with the investments goes. Talk to your advisor. The advisor is going to swing it back. And what's going to happen?
Not only
Nothing.
that,
Nothing.
but let's, guys, CPAs are not tax planners.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't even understand retirement accounts.
Mhm.
I mean, and I will tell you, we all use an accountant to do our taxes for us, right?
Mhm.
I remember one year asking my accountant something specific about a SEP IRA. She had no clue.
Mhm.
Mhm.
She had no clue. They understand income sources
Mm-hmm.
because that's what's going to drive your tax bracket, but they don't understand the functionality of the retirement plans themselves and the types of retirement accounts. They might know the basics, but they don't understand all the different things that you can do when you dive deep on how these laws are written for each of these retirement accounts.
And by the way, folks, it's not all their fault because it's not really
No,
part
right,
of their
yeah.
job.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
But as fiduciaries and independent fiduciaries, we feel it is our job. It has to be our job to not only look at the income, not only look at the investments, but how does that affect the tax strategy? How does that affect leaving a legacy to the next generation? Everybody's got a different opinion on that, right? Some people want to make sure that they leave a ton of money, leave the kids better off to start than they were. Some people say, if my last check bounces, so be it.
I
Right.
want to talk about the spend it twice strategy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm going to let Neil go there, but I want to talk real quick about how powerful independence is. So I had back surgery, going on a year ago. Okay. I did everything you could possibly imagine to avoid back surgery. And I was terrified of the idea of doing it. Right.
Sure.
And I was referred to a neurosurgeon. Right. And to come to find out, he was the top neurosurgeon at one of the big hospitals down here. And he had recently just left the big box medical facility
Mhm.
and came out independent on his own. And so when I went and I visited, I had two consultations, one with somebody that was still with the big box medical facility and one without.
Mhm.
And I had found a device called the Barricade. And the reason I was looking for it is because the surgery I was having, there was a risk for reherniation of your disc. So I had brought this device to the doctor, the neurosurgeon that was working for the big medical box firm, and he says, "Yeah, we don't need to use that at all. Yeah, we'll be fine. That device just came out. We don't need to use it." Go to my independent neurosurgeon. He said, "Brian, I think I'm the only certified neurosurgeon to do this in
Wow.
Pennsylvania."
Yeah. So what the first one meant was we're not allowed to use
Yes,
that.
that's exactly what
Yeah.
it meant.
Yeah.
They're not telling me that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I confirmed it with my neurosurgeon. I said, "Why is the other guy telling me that?" He goes, "Because if I was still with the big hospital, I would not be allowed to utilize this device."
Wow.
How scary is that?
That's
The most
scary.
important thing
Right.
is your health.
Right.
Mhm.
And because of the agreements with this big conglomerate,
Yes.
Mhm.
not allowed to use something that helps you.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
and,
It's
and
scary.
I said this on a previous episode that you may think your financial plan is unique, but they have to follow the specific business model of what they are told to do, just
That's right.
as the big box medical facility.
Yeah.
He had to follow what they did.
Right.
Yeah.
But then he makes it sound like, well, no, we don't need that device. It's not that big of a deal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just not truthful. Right.
Right.
Like, why not come out and say, look, if you want to use that device, I'm just not allowed to use it. So
Mhm.
if that's important for you, I would find an independent neurosurgeon. But
Mhm.
no, instead he says, we don't need that.
Yeah.
That's not.
Because then you leave and go find the
Yeah.
independent one.
because,
You did anyway.
so I've become good friends with my neurosurgeon. What
Yeah.
he tells me? He said, the reason I left is because I did not feel that I was holding up my my oath, right? Which is for a doctor is do no harm first.
Yeah.
And he says, when you're forced to cut,
Mhm.
that means somebody that potentially could benefit from physical therapy is recommended for surgery
Mm.
faster
Mm.
rather than sending them out for physical therapy first.
Yeah.
And there's no difference in the world that we are in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you go to that big name place, you might feel comfortable because they're a big name.
Yep.
Right.
So,
But at
yeah,
the end of
so
the-
do they say, I can't use those type of products, or do they say those are bad?
Right.
We
That's
don't.
exactly
That's a
right.
good point.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And if you think about some of those long-standing firms, they do things the way we've always done them.
Correct.
Mhm.
We talked about how things change, they
Yeah.
evolve, investments, all
Mhm.
kinds of different things. Well, they're doing things the way they've always have done them.
Yeah.
Does that still work? Does it still apply?
Mhm.
Yeah, they're still telling us if we want to lose weight, just use the Slim Fast diet.
Right.
Yeah.
Really?
Right.
There's
Avoid
this thing out
fats.
there called trizepatide and Ozempic. Can I use that?
Yeah.
Isn't that much better technology?
Well-
than the Slim Fast diet that's probably poisoning me?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it kind of goes to the adage of if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah,
It's broken,
Yeah.
right? And we see it's broken because we see people come in on a daily basis who are terrified, who don't know if they have enough. They have no clarity in the income strategy, but it's broken, but it's not being fixed.
You know
They're
what's
it's still
terrified 'cause they
being
have no
used.
plan,
Right.
right? I mean, they have investments, they get statements, they've done their part,
Mhm.
but there's no actual plan. They're not real sure where income's coming from.
Yeah.
Tax planning is pushed off to the accountant.
Mhm.
But
They
my guy
have
said I'm going to be
investments,
okay. He says,
But I'm
I'm
going to be okay, and you have a 97% chance of success.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But what if I don't?
right.
You know what's one of the hardest things we hear? When we have somebody a little bit older, maybe they're mid 70s, that come in and we show them, here's what you're doing, and here's probably what you should be doing. Say, why did no one show me this before? I wish I would have known this 10 years ago. And the I didn't know, I wish I would have known. You know how expensive that is?
Yeah,
You know how
sure.
costly that is to wait until you're years and years into retirement to then look for a change? That's why we encourage people to get educated and learn about what else is out there and
Yeah.
what's available. But the easiest thing to do is just keep doing what you're doing.
So
Yeah.
what you're saying is that trust can cost you a lot of money.
I can.
Trust in the wrong person
Mhm.
can cost you a lot of money because I think I've told you guys this story before, right? I mean, when I was working at the brokerage firm early on in my career, when I presented the idea of utilizing annuities in the
Mhm.
portfolio, they basically said, no, we will not do that because it will cannibalize the profits of the company.
Yeah.
And I go, what the heck does it? Well, if you're earning a 1% fee every single year on those assets, by the way, whether they go up or down, right?
Mhm.
So as those assets get larger, they're making more money. So if you carve off some of that money and now put it into an annuity, that annual fee is gone.
Well,
Yeah.
then you're carving out some of my golf time.
Yeah.
As advisor,
Because
I
now
won't
I
be
have
on
to
the
plan.
links, right?
Right.
Now I'm going to be back in that conference room trying to get more business if
Yeah.
I cannibalize some of it.
If people
Yeah.
understood that the annuity is the worst business model for a financial planning firm, because that is money that I can never earn a fee on.
Yep.
It's money that I can never flip or do something with again because it's a contract between them and the insurance company that pays them a lifetime income, regardless of whether there's money in that account or not.
Mhm.
But for a profit standpoint, and even if you were to sell the financial planning firm, private equity goes, oh, you used annuities, there's no reoccurring income on that.
Mhm.
Your multiple to sell your business is going to get smashed.
But what
Yeah.
do we hear from people coming in that their advisor told them, oh, he's trying to use an annuity. He wants a big commission
Yes,
check.
right.
Run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? But
We just
as you
explained that before.
explained, right? Yeah.
Did you?
And it made
Just
perfect
explain to
sense.
someone,
Yeah.
hey, we're using this annuity to solve for this for you. You're not going to take it actually for 13 years. In 13 years, it's going to produce this amount of income. Your market money based on a 4% withdrawal rule would have to earn 9.5% on average, like a bank CD, not like an average they give you of a mutual fund.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And here's what we get paid one time. What do you think's better for us? And he was like, not the annuity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1% for life
1%
Yeah.
or that commission one time.
Clarity, the right information gives you confidence with your plan. And, nobody wants to go into retirement not feeling confident about what's in front of them.
Mhm.
Could you imagine going into retirement with the unknown? Meaning, I don't know if these investments are going to perform or not. I don't know whether or not I'm going to run out of money. Look, we kid around when we say, 90% probability that this may work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm going into retirement, I want 100% probability that my plan is going to work. I
Yeah.
don't want 97% because if I'm in that 3%, that's going to be a bad day. But this is why,
Mhm.
we're going to write our second book, Financially Unbreakable. You guys are all participating in it,
Yeah.
right? And giving your insight. And we really want people to have the information that we talk about. We want you to have it in depth because we want you to go into retirement with the right information. And even if you didn't work with secure money advisors, I want you to be able to go in and have the right conversation with your advisor. That's the most important thing is for you being knowledgeable enough to ask the right questions about your plan. And a lot of times people get themselves in trouble because they don't know the right questions to even ask, even if they're interviewing a new advisor. Right. So, look for the book link in the show notes. You can also look and see if we've got any upcoming events where you can come out and get educated more on this stuff. But when we do our next episode, I want to talk about how we take the assets that we've accumulated over our working years and turn that now into a paycheck. And we're going to talk about different ways that you can turn it into a paycheck other than just utilizing the annuity. And we'll share other options of building a income strategy, if you will, without using the annuity. And then we'll compare whether or not, which one makes better sense to you. And you can decide for yourself.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you again on the next episode.